This kart was involved in a bit of a bingle last weekend. We had a bent front geometry. Kart's been up on the rack, it's all straightened. Now the last thing we've got to do is repair the rear bar bolt and put the rear bar back on the kart. Now we've already removed the rear bar earlier when we were straightening the go-kart. So if you haven't done that already, do that first because it makes getting these nuts undone a little bit easier. You can buy just the rear bar bolt, but we're going to be putting in a whole brand new assembly today. Hey guys, today's video we're going to be showing you how to repair your damaged rear bar bolts. Now this is a really common problem in go-karts. You cop one up the tailpipe. This kart was involved in a bit of a bingle last weekend. We had a bent front geometry. Kart's been up on the rack, it's all straightened. Now the last thing we've got to do is repair the rear bar bolt and put the rear bar back on the kart. There is a rear bar keeper set that you can get. So if a rear bar bolt breaks during your racing, your rear bar doesn't fall on the ground and you get a disqualification. So that's a really great thing to do if you can. And there's a link in the description below for that video, so go check that out too. Now on to today's video. So this is the bumper keeper kit from Kartmaster. They come in 32mm, 30 and 28. So you could get one for a cadet kart as well. And I highly recommend it. Like I said, it's a little cheap insurance policy. Now we've already removed the rear bar earlier when we were straightening the go-kart. So if you haven't done that already, do that first because it makes getting these nuts undone a little bit easier. And then get two 17mm spanners, a ring spanner and an open end spanner. And we're going to remove the lock nut first. And then we can spin off this second nut. Hang on to these two nuts because we're going to need them in a minute. Remove this whole assembly, which is the washer, the upright, and the rubber. Now we're going to lock the two nuts back onto the bolt. Put this one on first, this one on second, spin it back against itself, and then just lock them together nice and firm. And we're ready for the next step. Now to stop this special nut rotating, you can use a set of circlip pliers in those holes. Otherwise you could get a specially made pin spanner. Otherwise, if you don't have those things, you could probably just use a set of multi-grips like this. Grab your 17mm spanner. And then instead of undoing the nuts, we're going to do it up in a clockwise direction. So we can loosen the tension off the bolt head. And then pull the rubber out. Sometimes if they're tight, you can push it in a little bit and then just pull the whole lot out. Because what you're trying to do is you're trying to release the tension off this bolt head because it pushes out on the rubber, and this is what holds this inside the chassis rail. So if you can't get these out, you can just try wiggling it a bit, pushing it in a little bit, and then just pull it straight out and you should be pretty right. A great tip before you go any further is to clean out the inside of the chassis rail with a bit of brake cleaner, carburetor cleaner, and a clean rag. The reason being is some oil can sometimes build up in here and it stops the rubber from biting inside the chassis rails, and it can lead to the bolts sliding out while you're driving. You can buy just the rear bar bolt, but we're going to be putting in a whole brand new assembly today. The first step is slide your new assembly together and lock these two nuts together like we did earlier with your 17mm spanners. And then we're going to tighten this guy up just by hand. So we get a little bit of flare in the rubber, and then we're going to slide that into the chassis rail. So we're going to hold the special nut with the circlip pliers and then spin the 17mm nuts with the ring spanner anti-clockwise to do the bolt up tight inside the chassis rail. Now this is flaring the rubber out. So a good trick to know when these are tight enough is once you lock these two nuts together, undo the bolt using the spanner on this nut, and when it cracks free, generally that's tight enough or enough tension on the bolt and the rubber inside the tube of the chassis. So now we're ready to reinstall the little rubber, the rear bar assembly. You can just let it hang down. Install the washer. First up is the normal nut. Spin that on by hand. and then you can do it up into its final position. And then we can get our nylock nut, spin that on, hold the first nut with the ring spanner, and we can do this one up. Now you can use a ratchet ring spanner if you've got one, or even a socket and a ratchet. You could probably even nip it up with a rattle gun if you wanted to. Then just lock the two together and you're good to go. So now we're ready to reinstall the rear plastic crash protection. Pro tip, we always run our rear crash bars loose. The reason being, it's really hot and sticky here in southeast Queensland, but if we did want to tighten it up, it would have to be really cold and slippery, or we went to a track where no one had been for ages, a lot of dust, something like that. But it's pretty rare. So if you don't know any better, just run your rear bar loose. I'm going to show you how to do that right now. So to run your rear bar loose, which is what we always do, you can see this one here is a bit firm, a bit tight. Just back this little guy off, maybe half a turn, so that the brackets can flex while you're driving around the track. And it's the same for both sides. Now these rear bar bolts do break on the regular, so keep a close eye on them, especially if you've been out on the track and you've had a little bit of kart contact in the rear. The Kart Master is a great addition to any kart, so check those out as well. And thanks to all those guys that have been subscribing to our channel. We really appreciate it, and we're really pushing hard to hit 20K before Christmas here in 2021. So if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button, turn on those pesky notifications. You can follow us on Instagram and Facebook at PowerRepublic. You can go to our amazing website, www.powerrepublic.com.au, and grab yourself something awesome. Shout out to all our Patreons and YouTube members. We really appreciate that little bit extra. Thanks for watching. See you in the next video.